going to be building our RAG CVE workflow. So we're going to start by creating a new workflow and giving it a name, RAG CVE Workflow. And you can fill in these fields if you want. We aren't going to. And now we're going to click Done. So to start off our workflow, we're going to need to take a PDF and extract the text from it. So to do this, we can use the Shuffle AI app that they've created. So we can just drag this from the side apps bar into our workflow. And this will be our starter node. And then we'll just give it a name, extract text from PDF, and then find the action we want. From our action, we want extract text from PDF. And you can see here now it requires a file ID. So the file ID, this uses files that are uploaded to Shuffler. So we've already added our files, but I'll show you how. So basically you can just go up here to the top right and then go to organization and then go to files, and you just click upload files here and can upload any of the files you want. And then you can see our files here. We're going to use the for CVE report PDF. So we're going to click the copy file ID here on the right, and then we can just navigate back to our workflow. So then back here in our workflow, we're going to pass it to the execution ID. So what we're going to do is, oh sorry, it didn't save our AI app. So we're going to bring our AI app back here, and then we're going to name it extract text from PDF, and then use the extract text from PDF. And then so we're going to add it to our execution argument. So this is a JSON object, so we're going to add a file ID key. And in the value here, we're going to paste the file ID we just copied. And then now in our extract text from PDF app, we can use the autocomplete to get the execution argument. So it's $exec and then dot, and then we can call that file ID. And then now here we can just click test execution to make sure it's finding the file and extracting the text from it successfully. So you can see a response here, success true, and this is all the text that we have in our PDF. It's just a PDF that we got auto-generated by ChatGPT just for testing purposes, and it just mentions some CVEs. Also in the document we did mention the CVEs if you'd like to recreate a similar file and get the exact same output that we are getting. So then in our next step, we're going to use our RAG to actually extract the CVEs from the text. So we're going to search at RAG and drag that into our workflow here. And then it's connected to the extract text. And then we're just going to, we'll leave the name as, we'll make it extract CVEs. CVEs. And then we're going to use the extract CVEs from text action. And then we're just going to go down to the body. And then here we're going to use the value from extract text from PDF. So we can just use the shuffler autocomplete. So extract text from PDF, and then we're going to use the extracted text response. And then we're also just going to add these single quotations at the start and end, just because Shuffler sometimes can be weird when passing in big bodies of text into a field like this. So just adding these single quotes just kind of tell a Shuffler like here's where it's starting and then here's where it's going to end. So then we can run this, and now we should see our PDF will get extracted, and then the RAG will extract the CVEs from the text and then give us back a JSON response with the CVEs in it. So now you can see we got a response from extract CVEs, 200, and then we have our body, which contains our JSON object, which is a CVE and array, and these are all the CVEs that were in the text. So now with these CVEs, the next part of our workflow is we're going to use Shodan, the search engine. So we're going to drag that app in from the side, or you can search for it if it's not showing up for you. And then in this app here, we're just going to give it the name get related IPs. And then if you haven't authenticated it yet, you can use this link right here to get your API key, and you're just going to need to paste it in there. And then we're going to use the search Shodan without results action. Since we just need to search and find the IPs that are related to the CV, we don't actually need all the information for the exact CV. And then for the faucets here, we're going to use IP. So this is basically saying we want to retrieve the IPs that are related to it. And then the query here, we're going to use this. We're going to use query. And then next we're going to use the auto completion. So we're going to do extract CVEs, and then we're going to do the CVE list. So basically this is going to say that for every CVE we have in this array, we're going to run this Shodan once, and then we're going to use the CVEs, the query, and basically Shodan will give us a response back of all the IPs that are related to the CVE that we are requesting. So now we're going to run this to make sure everything's working. So now you can see down here in Shodan we have 4 responses, one for each CVE, status 200, faucet's IP, and then in the object here there's a count which doesn't matter to us, but we get the value which is the IP, which is what we wanted. So now for each CVE we have the same response with all the IP addresses. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take all these responses and we're just going to want to break them all down and just get one array that just contains the different IP addresses and none of the rest of the information. So to do this we're going to pull a shuffle tools from the side here, and in shuffle tools here we're going to name it get IP array and use repeat back to me, and we're going to use we'll expand the window here. We're going to use Python to extract the IP fields from all the responses and just put them into one final array. So I already added my code, and you can find it in the document too. So I'll just copy and paste it in. So basically what this code's doing is it's saying sees Python, and then it knows that in between these brackets is going to be all Python, and anything we print is going to be in the response. And then here we're just going to have to add the name of our Shodan node. So we're going to do autocomplete, and then it's because it's not connected as we don't have access right now. So I'm just going to submit this and then drag this down to connect it. Perfect. And now we can go back in and we should have access to the autocomplete. Yes, we do. Get related IPs. And then we're going to use the value field here. So really what we're just going to do, because we're doing all the logic processing inside here, we didn't actually need these fields, so I'll just copy the actual app name and paste it in. And then you can see here that JSON loads the whole app response. So all 4 requests were made for each CVE. And then in here we're basically just going to go into each app's response and pull out all the IP values and add them to the set, and then just dump the set as an array back to Shuffler. So we can just try it here, and then we should see a response down here below. Yep, so now you can see the 3 CVEs that we found from Shodan for related to the CVEs. So now we can submit, and then we'll run this one more time just to make sure everything's working, but usually when you do try it, it kind of verifies that everything's working as intended. So now you can see we're finished, and we scroll down here, get IP array, and yeah, we're getting the IP addresses that were related to the CVEs in the PDF. So our next step is we're going to use VirusTotal to search for these IPs and verify whether they're malicious or harmless. So we're going to search VirusTotal and then drag this in to our workflow, and then we'll connect this get IP array app. And now in VirusTotal, we're going to choose the get an IP address report, and authentication again. We showed how to authenticate VirusTotal in a previous video and in the document, so you can go there if you need to get your API key, and you just paste it in there. And then for IP addresses, we're just going to remove this, and we're going to autocomplete, and we're going to use get IP array, and we're going to use the list. So this is going to say basically, so for every entry that we have in that array, so each IP address, we're going to make a VirusTotal call with that IP address and get all the responses back. So now we're just going to test this again. So now we scroll down to the bottom here, and as you can see, we're getting our 3 responses from VirusTotal. And then in the attributes down here, we have access to the last analysis stats, which this tells us malicious, undetected, harmless, timeout, suspicious. We're just going to use this malicious field here. So now the next step we're going to want is we're going to create, instead of having this big response with everything from VirusTotal in an array, we're going to make an array, and then each response we're just going to convert it into a smaller object that has the count of malicious from last analysis stats that I just showed you, and also the IP address. So to do this, we're just going to use shuffle tools again. We're going to drag it in, and then we're going to connect this here, and then we'll name this malicious IP array, and repeat back to me. we're just going to save this. So then basically what we're going to do here is we're going to expand the window, and we're going to create a JSON object, and it's going to have two fields, malicious, and then we're also going to have IP. And then basically what we're going to do with these is we're just going to use the autocomplete and then go to get IP reports, or we forgot to name it, actually we'll go name that quick. Get IP report. And then back here we're just going to expand the window, and then we're going to use the autocomplete. So from get IP reports we're going to go to the data, and then ID is going to be our IP address, so we can paste that right in here. And then we're going to go back to IP reports, and then if you scroll down to around the bottom we should have the last analysis stats, and we're going to use malicious. And then we're going to paste that in here. So you can see this is what our response is going to look like for each one, and it's going to be an array. So now we're kind of going from an array with the 3 IP addresses to we'll go an array with 3 of these JSON objects, and then it'll show the IP address and then also like the count for whether it's been found to be malicious or not, and from how many sites. So now that's all set up, so we're just going to go and test our execution. So as you can see here, we're finished, and we go down to malicious IP array. We have 3 objects, each with the IP address and the malicious count, and you can see we have 2 that have been analyzed by VirusTotal and said to be harmless, and we have 1 that has a 2 malicious count. So we're just going to consider this as a malicious IP for moving forward. So now what we're going to do is, since we only want to continue with that 1 malicious IP address, we're going to drag another Shuffle Tools app into our workflow. I'm just going to delete this one. Sometimes Shuffler gets weird. And then so we drag this in, and then we're going to connect it to a malicious IP array. And basically in here, sometimes Shuffler is weird where it'll keep the body from another app, but usually when this happens I just delete it, and then I save the workflow just to make sure, because sometimes it's your changes in one can affect another. So that's why I save it, just to sync everything and to make sure we don't have that issue. So now in here, we're just going to name it filter malicious IPs. And then we're going to go to find actions here, and we're going to use filter list. Then basically, so input list is going to be the list that we're filtering. So for this, we're just going to use the malicious IP array. So we're just going to use this object, and then for the field we're going to use the malicious field here. So actually we remove everything before it, because it already knows it's array, so it's going to go through each object, and then we just need to check the actual malicious field. And then we're going to do check, we're going to do larger than, and we're going to do our value as 0. So this is basically saying that for all the objects in here, if the malicious count is greater than 0, like this one is, we'll include it, and if it's not greater than 0, like these 2 below, we're not going to include these. So now we're just going to try executing our workflow. So now the execution's finished, and we'll go down and we'll see filter malicious IPs. So there's 1 valid, which is going to be the one with a malicious count greater than 0, and then 2 invalid, and these have the malicious count at 0. So now basically we're going to want to use our next app to just take anything in this valid array, and then we're not including anything in invalid. These IP addresses are done for the rest of the workflow. So to do this, we're just going to use another Shuffle Tools and drag it in here and connect it to filter malicious IPs. And then again, we're just going to remove this, whatever's in the body, and we're just going to save it. And sometimes you can check just to make sure you see. So here it just removed everything that was in this call. So we're going to have to paste that code back. Down here. So we're just pasting this code back in, and again, you can just copy this code from the file, and you can just go in, and as long as this is green here, that makes sure that verifies that the path is right for the node. If it's red, like say we add a 1 here, that's an invalid app, so it's not going to be able to find the response. So we'll just submit that again, and then in here, Yeah, see, so this issue happens a little bit, but I find saving can really help prevent this. Because now we remove that, and okay, it's still being weird. So we're actually just going to delete this app here, and then we're going to copy the code in again, just make sure it's green. Yes, it is. And then we're going to drag in a new Shuffle Tools app. And hopefully this one we do not have the same issue, so we're going to remove that and save it. And yeah, now the code's still there, so thankfully we didn't have the issue again. And we'll just drag to connect this. And now we're going to name this one Get Valid IP Array. And we're going to use repeat back to me. And we're just going to use the autocomplete to go to filter malicious IPs. And this valid array is the one with the IPs we're going to continue with. And we just want a list of their actual IPs. We don't need their malicious count. So just as it is here. So basically this is going to return to us, we'll run an execution, but it's just going to return to us an array of just the IP addresses that are considered malicious that we want to continue working with. So we'll test the execution. So you can see the execution's done now. We can go down here and we have the array with just our one IP address that was considered malicious. If we had more, they'd also be in here. So now the next step is we're going to use Gemini to generate code to check whether this IP address is active on our server. So we're going to find the Gemini app that we created in a previous tutorial, just drag it in, and then we're going to connect it to get valid IP address array, and then we'll just name it generate code, and then authentication again. We did that in our previous videos, so if you need to do that, you can go back and see it. So we're going to use the generate content action, and then we're going to hide the body here, and we're going to paste in, we have a pre-made body, and this will be available in the document, so you can copy this. And then I'll just expand window to show you. Not sure why that show. Yeah, here we go. So basically it's just write a bash script to get out the list of the active IP addresses on the network. And then get valid IP array is going to be the array that we just created. So as you can see, it pastes in here and shows what the output's going to look like. And then we're just using a random server IP address here. You can customize this with your own. And then we ask for code only, no formatting. And then, yeah, so we can just, so that's all set up. And then what we're going to want to do is, also just always make sure that this is green again, just to make sure you're using the right app name and there's not an issue with your app name or it'd be red. And then one thing though before we actually execute this is, because in our, as you can see, because in our expected output it uses these double quotes like inside the array, and since the way the body works is we're using double quotes inside of, if you click show body and you can see the actual body here, so see how there's the double quotes there. So basically what we're going to actually want to do is go to this body down here and we're going to change it to use single quotes, because right now before when I would see the, I'll just go back to the body. So in the prompt here, when it would see these double quotes, because it starts with a double quote, it's going to think that's the end of the value, and then the rest following is going to look like invalid JSON. So instead now we're wrapping this all in single quotes, just so Shuffler knows that when it sees these quotes, these are just part of the string and it's not actually ending the key value for the JSON object. So now we can just go ahead and we'll save and then execute our workflow just to verify that everything's still working. So our workflow is done executing now. We can scroll down to the bottom and generate code. Make sure we got 200, and then we'll just have to step in a little bit into the JSON object to find our actual response. And you can see here, so it generated the text with the server IP address, and then it converted that list that we passed in to makes a list, and then this is all the bash code to check whether any of those IP addresses are currently active on your system. So now we're just going to add one final app to test. We're going to add a test app here. Basically, this is just going to print out our code for us. And so we're going to use repeat back to me. And we're just going to go into generate code. Sometimes this can be a little hard to get the actual fields you want. Okay, there we go. So we're going to generate code, and then we're going to go down to this text field here. And as you know from the previous videos, that Gemini, you just have to go to the 0 index for both arrays, and we'll actually get our response here. So now basically we'll just do print code. We're just using this. This is like, it's not necessary, just it makes it easier to see your response, because in Gemini, because it's such like a nested response, you have to step through. This way it'll just actually print it, like, and we'll run it again just to show you what our response is going to look like. And our workflow is finished here, so we can just scroll down to the bottom, and as you can see now, it's just a lot easier to see the actual code response. So now the last thing that we're going to add to our workflow is, it's working right now, but we want to make sure that, say in the PDF we pass in, there's no CVEs that exist, that we're not going to continue with our whole workflow, we can just exit out. And then also we want to make sure that after we filter the IPs, if there's no malicious ones, we can just exit out too. We don't need to generate code. So to do this, I'm going to add testing apps for both those. So I'm going to add one here, basically saying no CVEs found, and we're going to use the repeat back to me, and then we'll just do no CVEs were found in the PDFs extracted text, and I'm going to connect this to the RAG, and then we're going to add one more testing app just down here, and we're going to connect it to the filter, and we're going to say no malicious IPs were found. And we're also going to change this action to repeat back to me. You could also use shuffle tools for this, but I find testing is easier to use when it's like at the end of a workflow, or it's something like this, where it's like it's a certain case that we're not going to continue our execution. It just, when like looking at the workflow from a glance, it's just a lot easier to see. Like here, it's like where the execution is going to stop, and then shuffle tools, you use the repeat back to me during the actual workflow. So then in this testing here, we're just going to add there were no malicious IP addresses found in the PDF. So yeah, so right now though, so this is going to execute, and these testing nodes are still going to be executed during the workflow. So what we want is, we basically want, so the RAG will execute, and then after the RAG's done, we want to check, so if that CVE list, which the one right here, so we want to check if the CVE list is empty, we want to go to this testing node, but if it's not empty, we want to go to Shodan. So to do this, we can add conditional branches. So first we'll click on the branch here connecting the testing app, and we're going to add new condition. And then here we're going to go to extract CVEs, and then we need the actual path to the CVEs, which is going to be body and then CVE. So we're going to extract CVEs.body.cve, and then we're going to change this equals to isEmpty. So this is going to check basically whether this field in the response is empty, and then if it is, we're going to go down to this testing app. But then we don't want it to also keep executing and go to Shodan, so we're going to add a condition here, and we're going to use the same path, and then we're going to change this equals to isEmpty, and then at this equal sign at the start, we're just going to click on it to do opposite. So now it's going to like flip whatever response we get from here. So we want that workflow to keep going this way and get to Shodan when this is false. So that's why we're adding the opposite here. So we're checking, is the body like CVEs empty, and if it is, and then it's true, then we're going to flip that, and we're not going to execute. But if it's false, we're going to flip that, and it's going to be true, and we are going to execute. So now that's all set up, and we should have, if there are CVEs in the file, we should go to Shuffle AI, then to the RAG, then to Shodan, and so on. But if there are no CVEs in it, we should go Shuffle AI, RAG, and then go to this testing app here, and then we're not executing Shodan or anything after that. And then we're also going to add the conditional branches down here too. So we're going to do a similar check where basically we just have to find our filter app. And then you can see, so the path here, so it's going to be filter malicious IPs, and then it's just that valid array. So we're going to go here and add a new condition. We're going to do filter malicious IPs dot valid, and again we're going to use isEmpty. And then this is basically saying if that valid array is empty, which is the array with all the malicious IPs, we're going to go down to testing, and then here we're going to have to add the check for if it's not empty. Filter malicious IPs dot valid. And then we're going to use is empty, and then we're going to use the opposite again. So basically, so if it's not empty, this will be true, and then we're going to continue execution down to get valid IP array, and then to Gemini to generate code. So then I'll just execute the workflow one more time just to show it working, and because we do have CVEs in the PDF and we do have a malicious IP address, it should execute through everything and skip these 2 test nodes. But in the case we don't have CVEs, it should hit this test node, and in the case we don't have malicious IPs, we'll hit this test node. So we'll test the execution. And then our workflow is finished executing, so we can scroll down here, and everything was successful, and we did generate the code. And then you can see that we did skip both the testing actions as they're not in here. So yeah, and then that's everything for our workflow.